Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly through time back to a misty forest path in feudal Japan. You're alone wrapped in the heavy hush of pre-dawn sandals, padding softly on damp stones. Ahead, faint columns of steam curl upward into the chilly air, beckoning from a hidden bathhouse tucked into the mountainside. The air smells like pine needles, and something faintly mineral like earth that remembers battles and rituals. A low wooden gate creaks as you pass beneath it, ducking your head instinctively, though no one's around to scold you. You're here for a bath. Not just a rinse, but a full samurai cleansing, which sounds relaxing until you realize you're going to do this the old way. That means ice water, wooden buckets, and the looming possibility of scalding your behind if you misjudge the temperature. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this with your dignity intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious who else is out there soaking up sleepy history with me. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive barefoot at the Norin, that simple curtain hanging over the doorway. It flutters like a quiet invitation marked with the kanji for hot water. Stepping inside, you're met with polished wood and a stillness so perfect it makes your ears ring. The only sound is the slow drip of condensation off the ceiling beams. It smells like cedar planks and faint herbal smoke. The floor is warm underfoot, blessedly warm and smooth from centuries of padding soles. You step lightly, not wanting to disturb the air. There's no lobby, no receptionist with a clipboard. Just a few low benches, a bamboo ladle resting in a basin, and a heavy sliding door separating you from the inner sanctum. This you think must be what monks feel before meditating, that mix of awe and confusion, plus the sinking suspicion that you're about to do something incorrectly. You sit awkwardly on a bench. A small, stern woman emerges from a side hall, nods once, and gestures for you to follow. She does not speak. You're not sure if that's reverence or judgment. As you shuffle behind her, you catch sight of the bathhouse layout, low walls, lanterns casting soft gold against slatted wood, and the bath itself, an enormous hinoki tub sunken into the floor, steam rising lazily from its mirrored surface. It looks inviting in that boiled alive kind of way. There's no tap, just a system of hot stones constantly fed by fire beneath the building. Now you're shown to a small room no larger than a closet where a folded yukata rests neatly on a tatami mat. The attendant gestures to your clothes, off they go. All of them. No, not even socks. The concept of modesty here is built on mutual nonchalance and strategic towel folding. You fold your clothes with the precision of someone who has just realized they have no idea how to fold Japanese garments. The attendant watches. She doesn't help. Once disrobed, you grab the tenugui, a long, narrow towel that's somehow too small to be useful and yet crucial to the ritual. You hold it awkwardly in front of you, covering the necessary bits like you're in some feudal version of a sitcom. Now it's time to enter the furo area. But hold on, you don't actually step into the hot water yet. First, you cleanse. This is non-negotiable. No one wants your day filth polluting the communal bath. You head to a row of stools, each one low enough to ruin your knees, with a wooden bucket and ladle set beside it. There's no shower head. You sit. And here begins the first rinse. You ladle icy water over your shoulders. It hits like a slap from a particularly frosty ancestor. You do it again. And again. The goal isn't just physical cleanliness, it's symbolic. You're washing away the outer world, the stress, the politics, and possibly that strange smell from the udon stall. You scrub with coarse soap that smells like sandalwood and pine tar. Historians still argue whether ash-based soaps or rice bran pastes were more common in this era. Either way, exfoliation is not gentle. It's enthusiastic. There's a gentle splash as someone enters the bath nearby. No talking. Everyone's gaze remains politely downward focused on their own ritual. You feel a sense of camaraderie, silent, scrubby camaraderie. Now, fully rinsed and chilled to the soul, you prepare to enter the bath. You approach slowly, always slowly. Splashing is sacrilege, and heaven help you if you bring soap in with you. The water is deep, still, and astonishingly clear. It's not chlorinated, it's changed daily, filtered through charcoal and natural stone. As your foot slips beneath the surface, your muscles sigh. Heat seeps up your legs, coils around your back, and melts into your spine. You slide in inch by inch, careful not to disturb the surface too much. This isn't a pool. It's a sanctuary, a hot, sleepy, slightly ceremonial soup. Quirky tidbit. In some rural bathhouses, owners would add citrus peels or medicinal herbs to the water, depending on the season, turning the tub into something between a spa and a salad bar. The bath holds you like a wooden cradle. You breathe in, let your shoulders sink, and feel the tension unravel. No phones, no noise, just the quiet simmer of steam and wood. You try not to think about the next steps, like folding a kimono properly or walking in wooden shoes. For now, you're just a floating, marinated warrior. Sliding the door shut behind you with a gentle clunk, you're enveloped in the hum of heat and wet wood. Your tenugui now rests folded neatly atop your head like a towel hat with no ambition. A few elders soak in silence, their eyes closed in meditation, or possibly just pretending not to fall asleep. No one speaks, no one splashes. It's a deeply respectful hush, the kind of quiet that demands you also lower your internal monologue. But you being new to all this can't help but notice how the moisture beads on your arms, how your muscles slowly dissolve into the warmth, and how your butt is beginning to float slightly. Dignity is optional. Steam curls around your face like a sleepy dragon fogging your thoughts. After what feels like a warm eternity, your fingertips prune. That's your cue. You stand slowly, every motion, deliberate every drip of water, a farewell to the bath. You step out trying not to look like a giraffe learning to walk. Someone hands you another ladle of cold water. You pour it over your feet, ritual sealed, mind cleared. You retreat to the inner chamber where your yukata and fresh tatami await. The air is cooler here, scented with faint incense and the clean sharpness of cedar. A breeze moves through the paper walls just enough to remind you that you're still mortal. Now comes the most awkward yet dignified segment of the journey, the post-bath moment of awkward, semi-naked social protocol. In a corner of the room sits a low table. A few men in various stages of yukata assembly sit sipping warm sake from tiny ceramic cups that look like they were designed for dolls. You join clutching your robe closed with one hand and your last shred of modesty with the other. The sake is warm-hot, actually, and surprisingly sharp. You sip, it hits your tongue with fermented heat and then trickles smoothly into your belly, curling like a content cat. The silence in the room is thick, but not oppressive. It feels intentional, like everyone here has collectively agreed that small talk is overrated. A man across from you raises his cup in a tiny nod, then resumes staring off into the distance like he's thinking about lost honor, or maybe just noodles. That quiet, it's not boredom. It's cultural choreography. In Edo period Japan, speaking loudly or at all in bathhouses was frowned upon. You were supposed to be communing with your inner self or nature, or maybe just enjoying the sound of your own bones relaxing. Still, the occasional cough or shuffle of gaita sandals breaks the spell. You feel a twinge of jealousy watching how fluidly others handle their yukata, the way they knot their obi belts without hesitation. Meanwhile, you're pretty sure your left sleeve is also serving as a pant leg. You make a mental note to look more confident next time, even if that confidence is entirely fabricated. Mainstream fact-time Edo period bathhouses like this one weren't exclusive to samurai. Commoners used them too, sometimes more often. In fact, many neighborhoods had a public sento, where for a few coins you could wash away the day's grime and listen to your neighbors complain about fish prices or firewood shortages. The samurai version, however, was quieter, more ritualized, and as you're learning, blessedly free of gossiping merchants. Now a surprising element appears. The attendant who guided you earlier returns not with words, but with an item, a small, lacquered box. She places it beside you and opens it to reveal slippers. But not just any slippers. These are delicate indoor zori designed to help you transition from the bath space to the dressing area without polluting the fresh floors with your probably clean but let's not risk it feet. You slide your feet into them, careful not to crush their shape. They're cool against your soles, stiff but strangely satisfying. Walking in them feels like performing a tiny ceremony with each step. Right foot. Pause. Left foot. Pause. It's the world's slowest fashion show, and you're the only contestant. Then comes the fringe tidbit in some isolated samurai households. Fragrant powder was applied to the slippers, usually made from crushed chrysanthemum petals or sandalwood to leave a gentle scent as one passed. A way of saying I was here without actually announcing yourself, kind of like a polite olfactory calling card. As you move toward the dressing area, the architectural beauty of the space begins to unfold. Shoji screens slide like whispers, revealing tiny garden views framed with pebbles and carefully groomed moss. The air is cooler here, tinged with lavender and smoke. A candle flickers in an alcove, and the faint sound of water dripping into a stone basin keeps time like a sleepy metronome. Now you sit again. Another bench, another ceremony. This time, it's about breathing. Not because anyone tells you to, there's no yoga instructor popping in, but because the pace of everything makes your lungs slow down. You inhale. You actually taste the air humid, warm, and faintly bitter from the tatami straw. Historians still argue whether samurai found these bathing rituals meditative or merely obligatory. Some believe it was an echo of Buddhist purification practices. Others think it was just an excellent excuse to sit still without being accused of laziness. Either way, you're now fully in the rhythm of it. Slow motion everything. You take another sip of sake. It tastes better now. The room seems softer. You consider asking someone how to knot your robe, but the words get lost in your throat and dissolve like steam. The post-bath hush continues for several minutes, timeless, undisturbed, and comforting. Then a soft chime rings from the hallway, signaling the next stage of the evening, the folding, the wrapping, the binding. The kimono awaits, and with it, your dignity's final test. But that's for a few steps later. For now, you rest your elbows on your knees, cradle your cup, and think, how did anyone ever return to the chaos of real life after something like this? You're still warm. Not just outside, deep down in your spine and your marrow. The bath has burrowed into you, and your limbs are now soft, malleable, slightly confused noodles. But the journey continues. Your next destination. The rinse station, a place of personal reckoning and surprisingly athletic squatting. You shuffle across the tatami floor, leaving faint prints in your wake, and reach a low wooden cubicle lined with smooth stones. There are no faucets, no taps, just buckets and bamboo ladles stacked neatly beside wooden stools that clearly weren't designed with comfort in mind. They're short, unreasonably short. You eye one warily before lowering yourself onto it with the kind of slow descent that makes your knees feel like they're filing a formal complaint. Now comes the first rinse ritual, the part that separates those who bathe for comfort from those who bathe for ceremony. You reach for a ladle and scoop up the cold water resting in a wide basin. It's been sitting quietly waiting to test your courage. The water crashes down over your back, and you instantly regret every decision that led you here. It's cold, shockingly, almost insultingly cold. Goosebumps rise like tiny mountains across your skin. You gasp without meaning to. Somewhere in the bathhouse, an old man exhales with amused approval. You keep going. Another scoop. Another rinse. This isn't a splash-and-go kind of affair. This is a methodical cleansing, both physical and mental. Arms, legs, neck, ears, nothing escapes the cold truth of the ladle. The samurai believed this process removed not just dirt, but excess desire, bad luck, and metaphorical grime. You're scrubbing off ego anxiety, and that time you lost your temper in traffic. Mainstream fact alert samurai bathing rituals were deeply tied to Bushido, the code of conduct that emphasized discipline, respect, and spiritual purity. While public bathhouses were common, elite samurai had their own private furo, and the rinse phase was often seen as a personal moment of reconnection with one's values. You're not just washing, you're realigning. Soap comes next. Well, something like soap. A paste of crushed rice bran fine ash and occasionally ground herbs sits in a small ceramic bowl beside your stool. It's gray. It smells earthy, smoky, and faintly citrusy like someone tried to make body wash from a campfire. You scoop it out and begin scrubbing arms first, then chest, legs, even your scalp. It doesn't lather like modern soap. Instead, it clings to you with a sandy determination as if it knows it's your last defense against dishonor. The sound of scrubbing fills the room, rhythmic, sincere. No one talks, but there's a choreography to it, an unspoken tempo. Left arm, right leg, rinse, repeat. You notice something peculiar, small flat stones tucked in a basket beside you. A fringe tidbit, these were once used as gentle exfoliants, heated earlier in the bath, then rolled over sore muscles during scrubbing. Kind of like medieval Japanese spa tools. Or very fancy rocks. You pick one up still warm and glide it over your shoulders. It's oddly effective. You suddenly feel like a well-marbled cut of fish. Next to you, a younger man adjusts the angle of his stool with one hand while pouring water over his back with the other. It's impressive. You try to copy him. Your ladle slips, water splashes, you wince. Somewhere in the corner, someone stifles a chuckle. You've just committed the cardinal sin of the rinse zone noise. Fortunately, no one draws a sword. The cold rinse returns one last time to wash off the paste. It hits you differently now. Not as a shock, but as punctuation. A clean, bracing period at the end of a long, exfoliating sentence. Historians still argue whether samurai performed these rinse rituals daily or reserved them for significant occasions you remember reading once. Some claim it was a morning routine before donning armor. Others suggest it was an end-of-day cleanse, a spiritual unburdening after battle or bureaucracy. Either way, it was about readiness. Not just being clean, but being clear. You look down. Your skin glows faintly pink from friction and temperature trauma, but beneath it lies something quieter. You feel light. A little ridiculous, sure, but also deeply weirdly honest. There's nothing to hide behind when you've just dumped half a bucket of cold water over your own head in front of strangers. A small wooden basin waits nearby, filled with fragrant herbs, mostly mugwort and yuzu peel floating like forgotten dreams. This is your reward, a final rinse with warmth and scent. You pour it over yourself slowly, letting it trail down your arms, chest, and legs. The aroma wraps around you, citrusy, bitter grounding. The bucket slips from your hand and lands on its side with a soft clunk. The water trickles away across the stones, vanishing into the bathhouse's clever drainage system like a secret being swallowed. You stand. Steam rises gently from your skin. The tenugai on your head is now more decorative than functional, soaked and limp like a surrendered flag. You squeeze it out and lay it across your shoulder. Your feet find the wooden floor again, and it welcomes you not cold, not hot, just solid. This moment right here between rinse and robe is oddly perfect. Your breath is calm. Your heart has slowed. You're clean not just outside, but in places you didn't even know needed cleaning. You step back toward the dressing area, still dripping slightly, but dignified. Kind of. You pass a mirror and catch your reflection. Damp, pruny, mildly dazed, but also oddly noble-looking. Like a war-weary poet who just lost a haiku contest. Next up, the challenge of drying off with a cloth the size of a bookmark. But for now, just take a moment. You earned this. You return to the dressing area, legs wobbly from all the squatting, the kind of wobble that says, yes, I did just cleanse my soul with cold water, but I might need help standing up. The floor beneath your feet feels sacred now, worn smooth from generations of disciplined, damp footsteps. There it is, waiting for you on the edge of a tatami mat, your tenugoi, a cotton towel so thin it looks like a practical joke. You pick it up, hold it to the light. It flaps gently in your fingers, more philosophical concept than functional drying tool. Yet this is what you're supposed to use. You begin patting your arms. It works barely. Mostly the towel seems to move water from one spot to another, like an indecisive diplomat. You try your back next. It's like drying yourself with a permission slip. A cold breeze whispers through the wooden walls, reminding you that time is short. You pick up the pace, moving the cloth with firm resolve. Now comes the secret technique you don't really dry you air pat. The trick is to accept that you'll be a little damp for a while. In fact, that's the point. Samurai weren't trying to be desert-level dry. Slight dampness was considered refreshing, kind of like that weird guy who insists swimming in the rain is invigorating. Except here it's tradition. You wrap the towel around your head in a kind of headband twist like a sleepy karate kid. It makes you feel oddly official. You wonder if there's a correct way to do it. Spoiler, there is. Historians still argue whether the tenugui was worn twisted lengthwise or flat across the forehead, each style signaling different regional customs or possibly personality types. Maybe you're a twister, maybe you're a rebel. Next to you, a middle-aged man effortlessly wraps his towel around his neck and secures it with one elegant flick. It holds. Yours droops. You try again. This time, it stays probably out of pity. A small tray slides across the floor toward you. No hands, just a whisper of motion. On it, a ceramic cup of barley tea, a tiny dish of pickled radish, and a wooden comb carved with waves along the handle. You sip the tea, nutty warm, and oddly reassuring. The radish bites back a sudden reminder that flavor is not always a kindness. Still, it grounds you. And then a subtle shift, someone places a wooden box of soaps near the far wall. You shuffle closer out of curiosity. Inside are dozens of small, oddly shaped chunks, amber gray and pale green. Each one smells different. Some of them divine. Others, challenging. One smells like roasted chestnuts rolled through charcoal. Another like moss. Another like your great-grandfather's pipe met a spice market. You take the one that smells faintly of sandalwood and ash, the classic pairing. It's slightly gritty in your palm like compacted earth. When you rub it, it softens just enough to feel alive. This is not your off-the-shelf body wash with 7 syllables and a pump dispenser. This is artisan soap made by someone who probably hasn't smiled since the Edo period. And that's the point. Soap in samurai-era Japan was often handmade, using ash lard and natural oils, scented only with whatever was local and seasonal. Sandalwood was a favorite among warriors, grounding fragrant and slightly astringent. Ash, too, had symbolic power. It was believed to neutralize spiritual impurities as well as physical grime. There's something poetic about scrubbing your sins away with tree ghosts. The grit in the soap exfoliates like a truth teller. You feel the old layer of you tired, unsure, digitally overwhelmed, sloughing off in soft gray ribbons. This version of you smells better and worries less. At this point, your skin is clean, your hair is damp, and your dignity is hanging on by a clothespin. Time to get dressed, but not into jeans, not into pajamas. No. Your kimono waits. It's folded neatly in a wooden box, resting like a sleeping cat, elegant, mysterious, slightly threatening. You unfold the top layer. Beneath it lies an undergarment plain but meticulously pleated. Beneath that, the kimono proper, patterned with subtle cranes and wind. There's a thin sash, and then the real star of the show, the obi, a thick belt with enough personality to win an argument by itself. You pause towel still wrapped around your neck. This is it, the transformation moment. You're about to enter the second half of the ritual, the one where you go from warm, pruned mammal to dignified, layered being. You feel a deep respect for the process, even if you're still damp behind the ears. As you reach for the underrobe, a young attendant stops beside you and wordlessly places a camellia oil bottle and a small puff beside your dressing station. He bows, then vanishes. A quirky detail you didn't expect in traditional bathhouse etiquette, a light coating of camellia oil was often applied to the skin after bathing to retain warmth and moisture, especially during colder seasons. Samurai swore by it not just for hydration, but also because it made sliding into layers of silk smoother. Plus, it gave their skin a subtle sheen that probably made negotiating land rights more persuasive. You dab the oil on breathing in the faint floral tang. It absorbs quickly, leaving no residue, just a feeling like you've been respectfully polished. Now your tenugai towel is no longer needed. You fold it in thirds and lay it neatly beside the kimono box. It served its purpose. You bow your head slightly toward it. Yes, you just bowed to a towel and begin to prepare for the first fold, the first layer. But that's the next act. For now, you sip the last of your barley tea, wrap the underrobe around your frame, and feel the warmth lock in like memory. Every movement feels deliberate, sacred, slightly terrifying. You're no longer just bathing, you're becoming. You stand now at the threshold of transformation, wrapped in your underrobe, hands hovering over the fabric folds like you're about to perform minor surgery. The air feels heavier, the lighting softer, and your fingers just a little too clumsy for the sacred task ahead. But there's no turning back. The kimono is calling. You lift it from the box with both hands, careful not to let the ends drag. It's heavier than it looks, soft, yes, but with weighty dignity. The silk brushes your skin with a whisper of elegance and warning, like it knows you're probably going to mess this up. Laying the garment flat, you try to orient it. Which part goes where again? The sleeves stretch out like wings, the hem falls into perfect geometry. And then it hits you, this isn't just dressing, it's a performance, a statement, a way of saying I'm here without actually speaking. You slide one arm through a sleeve, then the other. The fabric envelops you with a cool sigh. It clings slightly, the camellia oil doing its quiet magic. As you begin to fold the garment across your chest, your brain panics slightly. Which side goes on top again? A memory flickers, an old warning whispered during a museum tour. Left over right. Always. Because right over left. That's how you dress the dead. You pause mid-fold, a bead of sweat forming at your temple despite the calm. Imagine walking around blissfully ignorant, dressed for your own funeral. It's one of those cultural faux pas that can't be forgiven with a shrug and a nervous laugh. You realign the fabric. Left over right. Crisis averted. Mainstream historical truth. In traditional Japanese clothing, the left panel of the kimono is always folded over the right, except during funeral dressings. This rule was so strict, even small children were taught early to avoid ghost style. It was a social signal as strong as forgetting to wear pants. Once the front is folded correctly, you reach for the koshihimo, a thin tie used to secure the inner layers before the outer obi comes in. You loop it around your waist, knotting it snugly. It holds everything in place, giving you structure, confidence, and the illusion that you've done this before. But even with the basics secured, there's more to contend with. The kimono is long, trailing a little past your ankles. You hike it up slightly and re-knot the inner sash higher, adjusting the fall of the fabric so it lands with precise elegance. This is what they call adjusting for dignity, or in your case, tripping hazard management. A mirror on the far wall catches your reflection, someone who looks poised, layered, and deeply unsure of how sleeves are supposed to behave. You practice a small bow. The fabric responds with an audible swoosh. You try a bigger bow. Your sleeve smacks the floor. Baby steps. Then you notice something tucked into the side of the kimono box, a small card ink-brushed with a name that isn't yours. It belonged to someone else. Maybe another bather, maybe a relative long gone. Fringe tidbit in many traditional bathhouses, garments were shared, rented, or even passed down, and it wasn't uncommon to find calligraphy tags noting the previous user. Some people left poems short haiku, or subtle warnings about tight seams or loose stitches. You trace your finger over the characters wondering if they mean strength wind or don't trust the obi. Speaking of which, the obi now lies in wait like a smug serpent. It's broad, stiff, and undeniably stylish. You lift it up. It's longer than your arm span, dyed with pale clouds and a hint of plum blossom. It demands respect and a PhD in folding. You start wrapping it around your midsection, carefully overlapping each fold like origami for grown-ups. It's not just decorative, it's functional. The obi reinforces posture, compresses the core, and keeps the kimono aligned. It says, this person knows what they're doing, even if you're internally screaming. Tying it, though, that's another matter entirely. The knot or musubi comes in many variations. You go for the simplest, the taiko musubi or drum knot. Named for its flat, boxy shape, it's the default for formal wear. You pull the ends tight, then loop, fold, and tuck. The result, a respectable knot that holds. Kind of. Well, it's lopsided, but it's your lopsided. You tug it once more and it firms up. Good enough for a novice samurai, or at least a very dedicated tourist. Historians still argue whether early samurai wore their kimono in the precise layering methods we associate with Edo-era nobility, or if earlier warriors went for simpler, looser dress, especially in the field. Some scholars believe battlefield practicality overruled fashion, while others point to woodblock prints showing immaculate robes mid-duel. One thing's for sure, no one wore Crocs. Now fully dressed, you test your range of motion. Arms limited, legs stiff, turning around not without comedic results. But you look stunning, like someone who could recite a tanka before sword fighting a moonlit duel. You move toward the doorway again, bowing slightly with each step. The kimono flows behind you, and for a brief, shimmering moment you feel transformed, not just dressed, but initiated. And somewhere in the far-off distance of history, a very old, very serious man gives you a nod of approval. You shuffle forward, arms gently pressed to your sides, the fabric of your kimono whispering with each movement. It's not a rustle, no, that would be far too assertive. This is a swish, a soft reminder of the weight of history wrapping itself around you. You reach the small sitting area again, now fully dressed and properly folded. There's no applause, of course, but you can't help imagining that if there were a panel of ancient judges, at least one would give you a polite nod, maybe even a slow blink of approval. As you lower yourself to sit cross-legged slowly, carefully, lest you pop a seam or lose circulation, you're handed something unexpected, a small tray with 2 ceramic items. One is a tiny porcelain bottle filled with warm sake, the other a shallow, lipless cup the size of a teacup saucer. This is your reward rice wine in perfect silence. The first sip is warm, sharp, and just a bit sweet. It seeps through your chest like a second bath. You're not gulping. No one gulps here. It's more of a thoughtful, yes, rice was always meant to be this expressive kind of moment. Each sip slows your breath, softens the edges of your thoughts. You're still. You're centered. You're mildly buzzed. Your other hand drifts to the small plate beside the sake. On it, salt pickled plum. You bite it. It fights back. Salt sour punchy, your taste buds recoil, then reassemble in cautious respect. You feel suddenly more alert even with the alcohol, a paradox in fermented form. This is the quiet intermission of the samurai bathing ritual, a chance to rehydrate, recalibrate, and let the heat of the bath settle in your bones. Mainstream fact post-bath sake wasn't merely indulgence. It was common for samurai and nobles to enjoy a modest drink after cleansing, partly as a digestive aid, partly as a gesture of serenity. It signaled completion, a job well done, or at least a job not disastrously failed. No one speaks, not because they can't, but because they don't need to. Conversation in this space is optional, like a footnote on a painting. You take another sip. The silence isn't awkward. It's sacred. Your eyes drift around the room, wood everywhere. Not the polished, shellacked kind you find in high-end condos, but real wood, grainy, knotty warm. The smell of cedar still lingers infused into the very beams. Lantern light casts honey-colored shadows along the walls. A soft clack echoes as someone sets down their sack bottle with perfect intention. Then come the slippers, or rather, the delicate indoor zori. They appear beside you, set gently by an unseen hand. Straw soles, cloth tops, barely shaped like shoes, yet somehow more dignified than your best pair of dress boots. You slide your feet into them, toes snug between the thong straps. They don't grip so much as hover politely beneath you. And the way you walk in them, very carefully. The floorboards creak just so under your weight. You walk slowly, not because you're tired, though yes you are, but because that's the rhythm here. You don't stomp in a kimono, you glide. Or try to. You end up doing a kind of quiet shuffle drift that probably resembles a ghost politely excusing itself from a party. A narrow hallway leads you to a side veranda. You slide the door open, letting in a burst of cool night air. It bites your cheeks, which only makes you appreciate the lingering bath heat even more. Outside the bathhouse garden lies quiet and minimalist moss stone lanterns, a few artfully bent pines. You sip again, and the sake now tastes like silence with a hint of rice. Now seated beneath the overhang, you watch a small breeze ripple through the hanging sudar blinds. The paper flutters. Somewhere a bamboo fountain tilts and drops its wooden clack, echoing like a sleepy heartbeat. Time here doesn't pass, it reclines. Fringe tidbit in many traditional bathhouses, especially in Kyoto and rural estates post-bath sake, was served with an element of seasonal awareness. Chrysanthemum-infused rice wine in autumn, plum in early spring. Some even included floating sakura petals, because if you're going to drink rice wine, why not add poetic symbolism? You drink slowly now, aware of the weight of your sleeves, the slight constriction of the obi at your waist, the warm tension between tradition and modern awkwardness. This isn't cosplay. This is culture worn like armor, elegant and constraining in equal measure. A moment later, you hear the faint clack of Geta sandals from another corridor. Someone is heading to the dressing chamber. Their pace is slower than yours was more sure-footed. Maybe they've done this many times. You smile at the thought that even now someone out there is fumbling their towel exactly as you did. Historians still argue whether these quiet post-bath interludes were meant to simulate meditative retreats, or if they were simply practical ways to avoid passing out from heat exhaustion. Either way, they work. You feel composed. Like the pieces of you have folded into place just like the layers of your kimono. And then, like clockwork, the quiet deepens again. No sound but the wind and that soothing clack of the bamboo fountain. You shift slightly in your seat, letting the hem of your kimono adjust itself. It settles like a sigh. You don't want to move. But you know what's next. Drying off was easy. Sock was a joy. But now comes the socks. You glance down at the pair waiting on a wooden tray, snow-white tabi with their distinct split toe and impossibly tiny openings. They seem to smirk at you. But that's for another moment. Right now, you finish your sake, set down your cup with the same reverence someone might use for a tea bowl, and take one final breath of that night air crisp, clean laced with cedar and citrus and ancient stories. You stare down at the socks like they've just issued a challenge. Tabi. 2 compartments, one for your big toe, one for the rest, and a heel that seems impossible to locate until it's already half folded into oblivion. White as rice, crisp as origami, and judging you softly from the woven tray. You reach for the first one, handling it like some kind of sacred scroll. Your fingers fumble with the opening. It's smaller than expected, tighter than fair. You wiggle your toes experimentally like you're warning them of what's to come. And in you go. Big toe first, then the rest. And the moment your foot slides in, you feel its separation. A philosophical split. A mild identity crisis in your own toes. It's strange at first, but oddly comforting, like the sock is teaching your foot the value of personal boundaries. You tug the back, fasten the tiny inner ties, and feel like you've just completed a miniature wrestling match with a cloud. Victory. Then you glance at the second one smug on its tray. It will not go quietly. But you've learned. This time, your toes cooperate. Mainstream fact time. Tabi were a crucial part of traditional Japanese dress, not just because they looked neat, but because they were required when wearing footwear like geita or zori sandals. The split-toe design provided flexibility and balance, especially when navigating uneven ground or, say, stealthily tiptoeing through enemy estates at 2 a.m. Normal samurai errands. Tabi were also a sign of formality. White ones like yours denoted cleanliness, purity, and occasion. Darker tabi, often indigo, were worn daily or in rougher environments. And if you wore tabi without shoes, outside scandalous. Probably illegal. Definitely rude. The second sock snaps into place and suddenly your feet feel contained, grounded, like you could deliver a scroll, write a poem, or take a 10-step duel without your big toe mutinying. You stand slowly testing your balance. The floor underfoot feels different, cooler, sharper, more articulate. Then comes the sound. Clip, clop, clip, clop. No, not hooves. Your next footwear, the noble, bizarre, utterly impractical geita sandals. 2 wooden platforms mounted on blocks like minimalist stilts or very serious flip-flops. You eye them. They eye you back. You slide your tabby-covered feet into the slotted straps and rise. Instantly, your center of gravity shifts. You're taller, slightly unstable, like a newborn deer trained in martial arts. The sandals make contact with the wood floor. Clack, clack, sharp, hollow, ancient, fringe tidbit. It's said that samurai could be identified in part by the way their geita echoed through castle corridors. A proper 3-beat rhythm heel front block rear block was expected. If your steps made the wrong sound, you were either drunk, disrespectful, or a poet. Possibly all 3. You begin walking slowly. Step, clack. Step, clack. Each step is a small decision. Your knees bend differently, your balance shifts, your posture adjusts. This isn't just walking, it's performance art with consequences. There's an unspoken challenge in navigating a hallway without sounding like a construction site. The corridor ahead is dimly lit. Paper lanterns flicker with soft orange glow, and the bathhouse creaks and sighs around you. You pause at a polished cedar beam, steadying yourself. You've come so far from cold rinse to silk folds to toe imprisonment, and now you're wearing what are essentially formal wooden stilts with socks. There's a metaphor in here somewhere. Outside the sliding doors lies the outer walkway, a covered path lined with stone lanterns and gravel. You push the door gently. It slides open with a sigh and cool night air brushes against your cheeks. You step outside, clack. The sound echoes, clack. Birds stir in the trees. A breeze sways the trees above the bathhouse roof. Leaves rustle in a language you don't speak but wish you understood. You begin to walk the length of the walkway, each step deliberate. Geita were not made for sprinting or running errands or chasing after spilled sake. They were made for this. Composure, restraint, quiet thunder. You reach a stone bench, lower yourself with exaggerated care, knees, tight back straight sandals, half hanging over the edge, and rest your hands in your lap. The geita dangle like punctuation marks beneath your robe. And in this moment, you understand something. These garments, these rituals, these tools, they were never meant to be efficient. They were designed for presence. You can't rush in geita. You can't slouch in a kimono. You can't think about taxes when you're trying not to split your tabi seams open. Historians still argue whether geita were preferred daily footwear for samurai or mostly ceremonial, since some records suggest that foot soldiers favored straw sandals for mobility, while geita were for town appearances, temple visits, or tea ceremonies, where looking dignified while sounding slightly unhinged was part of the charm. You look down at your socks, then your sandals. one foot slightly crooked. You adjust. There now you look like someone who knows the poetry of their own ankles. Back inside, a bell chimes low and long. It's not calling, it's suggesting. The end of this phase is near. You rise again, shoulders square. The geta clack once more as you walk toward your final ritual. But for now, the breeze carries the scent of pine and warm cedar. Somewhere behind you, a curtain sways. Somewhere ahead, a new silence waits. You are layered, lifted, and balanced by cloth, by wood, and by the quiet footsteps of history beneath you. You return indoors with the solemn gait of someone who's finally made peace with walking on blocks of polished wood. Your geta clack against the floor in a rhythm that now feels intentional, almost meditative. Each step is punctuation, each pause a breath between thoughts. You ease yourself back into the dressing space, where the air is still warm and perfumed by burning incense, now softened into something woody and floral. The kimono still fits miraculously. Your tabi still cling loyally to your feet. But the next step in this slow-motion transformation awaits understanding what you're wearing. The moment you sit, an elderly attendant appears, arms folded like origami, and gestures gently toward a lacquered box beside you. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Her gaze says, "You've passed the physical trial. Now comes the social decoding." You open the box. Inside lies a folded parchment, a fan, and swatches of kimono fabric with patterns so intricate they make your head tilt. Birds, waves, tiny repeating fans within fans. It's like someone folded poetry into silk and dared you to wear it with confidence. This is the world of patterns, prestige, and passive aggression. You glance at your own kimono's subtle crane wings in dark ink gray over pale blue. You thought it was decorative. Turns out it's a thesis statement. Mainstream fact in Edo period. Japan kimono patterns were deeply coded signals, speaking volumes about your social class age, marital status, family affiliation, seasonal awareness, and even your moral values. Wearing plum blossoms in summer faux pas, sporting hexagonal tortoise shells. Statement of longevity and endurance. Wearing loud patterns as a widower that might raise some eyebrows, or fans. The fabric swatches in the box tell stories. One has a pine needle motif symbol of endurance and masculinity. Another has flowing water and maple leaves signifying autumn and quiet resignation. Then there's asanoha, the hemp leaf pattern representing growth and strength, often chosen for children's clothes, or as your internal monologue suggests, for adults trying to manifest stability. You recall a story true, or maybe just well-loved folklore, that during New Year's, some samurai would change into a new kimono featuring a rising sun motif, but would wear it backward in the house as a joke. Because even disciplined warriors needed dad humor. You sip a small cup of barley tea again. It's been refilled without you noticing. You're starting to suspect the bathhouse runs on ghost service, silent, perfect, invisible. You let the warmth seep through your teeth and take another look at your sleeves. You hadn't noticed it earlier, but there's a tiny embroidered mon near the shoulder seam, a family crest subtle and silver gray. 3 hollyhock leaves within a circle, a soft flicker of memory. That's the Tokugawa clan from the ruling family of the Edo shogunate. You blink. The attendant lifts a single eyebrow. You look at her then, at your shoulder, then back at her. Did they just loan you a high-ranking kimono? She offers the barest of shrugs and walks away. Fringe tidbit high-status kimono were sometimes rented or borrowed for formal occasions, even by samurai of lesser rank. But wearing a mon you didn't technically inherit, that was risky. It could be taken as flattery or impersonation. But in some settings like bathhouses, wardrobe hierarchy relaxed a reminder that under all the folds and starch, everyone had the same knees. You press a hand to the fabric lightly. It feels less like clothing now and more like a costume you're slowly growing into. Then comes the fan. You pick it up, painted with gold cranes flying across a stormy sea. Weighty, balanced. Not the paper souvenir kind you get at festivals, but a real one with lacquered ribs and faint perfume between folds. You flick it open slowly. It snaps. Everyone in the room turns slightly. Just the heads, just for a second. You bow slightly in apology, cheeks warm. A soft nod from the elder in the corner lets you off the hook. You return to your tea and adjust your sleeve to hide the mon just in case. Historians still argue whether the use of fans indoors during ceremonial dressing was a sign of status or simply a way to keep from sweating under all those layers, especially in the sticky Japanese summers. Some believe the fan was used as a pointer literally to indicate tea offerings or selected poems. Others think it was more for dramatic flair. Gesture with fan dramatically, say something wise, then leave. You try it. You fan yourself once slow, elegant, composed. You say nothing. You feel like a kabuki understudy waiting for your cue. A younger man nearby is now struggling with his obi clearly tangled. He tries to redo it in front of a mirror, muttering under his breath. You offer him a sympathetic glance. He sees your perfectly lopsided musubi and offers a nod of solidarity. Kimono, kindred. You begin to sense that all of this, the patterns, the etiquette, the choices are like a wearable language. You're speaking it now, albeit with an accent. You glance down at your hands, resting calmly in your lap. Everything layered, everything exact. For a moment you think, I could do this. Live like this, walk in silence, speak in folds, eat pickled radish, and use toe socks. But then, as if summoned by fate, the geta shifts slightly on your feet. A wobble, a reminder. You are still learning. And these clothes, though beautiful, demand a kind of mindfulness that modern sweatpants simply do not. You rise slowly. The tea is finished. The tray taken as always by unseen hands. There's one more place to go before sleep. One more rite to complete before you can unfurl from your ceremonial casing and remember what knees are supposed to feel like. But for now, you step toward the final chamber layer's rustling crest, concealed fan in hand, and you carry with you a new kind of awareness. You don't just wear the kimono wears you back. You make your way down the next corridor with the careful elegance of someone who now knows their sleeve could knock over a teacup or a dynasty. The fabric brushes your calves with each step, the geta clicking softly against the wooden floor like a slow, polite metronome. You've survived the folding, you've tamed the fan, you've even gotten through the tabi-toe separation therapy. But now comes the ultimate test of awareness and grace, remembering to fold your kimono the right way and absolutely not the wrong one. You pause for a moment near a small alcove, a tokonoma with a single calligraphy scroll hanging beside an arrangement of chrysanthemums in a bamboo vase. You bow your head slightly, as one does in the presence of such quiet power. Then you glance down at your chest. Left over right. Still correct. Thank the ancestors. Mainstream fact, the left over right rule in kimono folding isn't just etiquette, it's ironclad tradition. In Japanese culture, the right over left fold is exclusively reserved for the dead bodies prepared for burial, are dressed that way and that way only. It's not just a mistake, it's a symbol, a language of finality. And let's be clear, making that mistake in public would be the equivalent of showing up to a wedding in funeral robes while screaming YOLO. You'd either offend someone's grandmother or invite ghostly side-eye from several directions, possibly both. You pass a small mirror near a lacquered chest and steal a glance. Your robe still falls left over right. You smooth it anyway, just in case. Paranoia is the price of tradition. But here's the trick. The fold doesn't just express life versus death, it also reflects intentionality. By folding left over right, the garment wraps with the heart side protected underneath. Think about that. You're literally wrapping your body so your heart is concealed, guarded by the outer layer shielded from the world. Ancient samurai weren't just folding cloth, they were folding metaphors. You sit again, legs tucked beneath you, and a young attendant brings over something unexpected, a small lacquered tray with folded scraps of fabric, thin cotton test pieces, printed with the same mistake. Right over left. Wrong and wrong again. A learning aid. You raise an eyebrow. She smiles politely and gestures to them, then to your own robe. This is a training game, apparently a mental drill in folding correctness. You reach for a square of cloth and begin refolding it. First time mistake. Second time closer. Third time. You get it. Your fingers move faster now, finding the pattern, the natural grain of the fabric. Fold, press, finish. There's a rhythm, a memory in the muscles. And maybe that's the point, to make correctness habitual, not just performative, so you don't have to think when it really matters. You wonder how many generations grew up practicing this exact movement. How many children were taught with scraps and whispered reminders. How many old warriors corrected their grandkids' folds without a word, just a subtle nudge, fringe tidbit. There were even regional games among kimono makers and bathhouse attendants competitions to see who could fold the perfect living fold the fastest blindfolded. Winners earned bragging rights and occasionally tea sweets. Losers got mocked with, "You'd bury a living man." Your training session ends with the return of your fan, now offered with a slight bow. You flick it open gently this time, no dramatic snap, just the whisper of unfolding. It's become second nature. You fan yourself once, just once, and tuck it back into the fold at your obi's side. Then comes the final check. A 3-panel mirror awaits you in the next room, angled so you can see the back seam alignment, sleeve balance, and hemline fall all at once. It's less about vanity, more about symmetry. Samurai didn't dress for dazzle, they dressed for balance. A poorly aligned back seam dishonor. A crooked obi, a metaphor for inner chaos. You adjust your hem. Straighten your obi slightly. One sleeve is drooping lower than the other. You pinch and lift, smoothing the fabric like you're petting a silken cat that occasionally hisses if treated without respect. You step back from the mirror. Not bad. You look composed. Still a little overwhelmed. Still mildly suspicious of the socks. But definitely alive. The left fold guards your heart. The fan rests precisely in place. The crest on your borrowed kimono still hidden under the shoulders curve. Historians still argue whether this pre-bedtime dressing ritual was done alone or with assistance, especially in more elite households. Some records suggest samurai wives or servants would help with the folds and obi knotting. Others insist that personal discipline demanded self-dressing, even if it meant 30 minutes of grunting in silence, while one's arm went numb. Either way, the act was sacred. You stand now near the edge of the chamber, just outside a bamboo curtain drawn across the sleeping quarters. A soft voice murmurs something from within, probably a reminder that it's nearly time to rest. You respond with a nod, feeling the fabric shift across your shoulders. It's remarkable how much gravity cloth can carry. It's just silk, just cotton. But worn this way, folded this way, it feels like armor for the spirit. You take one last look down at your chest. Left over right. Still living. Still learning. You step toward the sleeping chamber now, the weight of your kimono and the gravity of its folds still fresh in your bones. The air grows quieter, as if even the walls understand what's coming next. The most delicate, most deceptive of trials. The one that binds everything together. The obi. Oh yes, the obi. You've already tied it once, a reasonable facsimile of the taiko musubi, and it hasn't unraveled yet. But tonight, you're expected to retie it properly before sleep. Not because someone might judge you, although someone absolutely might, but because tradition says a warrior should never rest with a knot he can't explain. You settle on the tatami mat again. It smells faintly of tea leaves and compressed time. A small mirror waits nearby, the lighting dim but sufficient. You reach back to touch the obi. It feels like someone else tied it now, someone bolder, perhaps slightly reckless. You begin to untie the knot, careful not to jerk or pull. This is not a shoelace. This is a ribbon woven with unspoken family history, and it cost more than your monthly rent. You ease it free, fold it beside you, and pause. Breathe. Stretch your fingers, then slowly you begin again. Obi first wrap. Flat against your midsection. Firm, but not suffocating. You pull the long length around yourself once, then again, overlapping slightly, smoothing out any folds. It creaks faintly as the silk stretches across the cotton of your kimono. Then comes the loop, the tail, the tuck, the fold. Now the musubi, the drum knot. You cross the ends, fold one into a square, flatten it like a paper envelope, and wrap the other end around it before tucking it into itself. There. Sort of. Almost. You exhale, and then the moment of truth you let go. And it holds. A little off-center, a little overambitious, but it holds. Mainstream fact, the obi is arguably the centerpiece of the kimono. For women, it can be wide, elaborate, structured with stiffeners and layered embellishments. For men, especially samurai, it's narrower, firmer, and simpler, but no less symbolic. The way one ties the obi is a direct reflection of personal discipline. A crooked knot was once taken as a sign of a chaotic inner life. You rise to your feet and examine your silhouette in the mirror again. The obi slices cleanly across your middle, defining your form. Not flattering exactly, kimonos aren't about curves. They're about lines, angles, presence. You shift slightly, watching the fabric ripple with every motion. You realize the obi isn't just a knot, it's a boundary. It divides the upper body from the lower, the internal world from the external, the self you carry and the one you present. And here's the truth you weren't ready for. The obi is tight, not painfully so, but firm enough to change the way you breathe. You start noticing your breath gets shallow, your spine elongates. You hold yourself taller, not out of vanity, but necessity. You can't slouch in an obi, it's physically impossible. You imagine a samurai kneeling in a formal hall, back straight eyes, forward his obi anchoring him in place, not just literally, but philosophically. Tied together, tied down, ready for anything. A tray arrives beside you, another cup of warm water. No sack this time. Your ceremonial buzz has faded, replaced by calm attentiveness. The attendant gestures toward the small lacquered box of accessories, fans, combs, pouches, and from within it you select a slim in-row case. Black lacquer flecked with gold leaf, held together by a silken cord. Just decorative? Not quite. Fringed tidbit in-row were once used by samurai to carry seals, medicines, or incense pellets tied to the obi with cords, and fastened by a netsuke, a small carved toggle. Men's kimono had no pockets, so everything relied on this system. Some netsuke were art pieces, others were suggestive. Yes, even samurai had novelty keychains. You examine the netsuke, attached to yours a sleeping cat. Simple, peaceful, humble, maybe a little humorous. A small private joke tucked into a life otherwise wrapped in silk and expectations. You tuck the in-row into your sash. It nestles there steady. Then you see it the obi makura, or obi pillow. A soft little pad used to support certain knots, mostly in women's wear. You pick it up curious. It doesn't belong in your current ensemble, but you appreciate the detail. Even the accessories have accessories. You sit again, knees tucked in the knot of your obi resting square against your lower back like a secret seal. You lean forward slightly, no shifting, no loosening. It's secure. You're secure. Historians still argue whether men ever used structural tools like the obi pillow in private dress, or if it was strictly for female presentation in formal events. Some suggest elite samurai occasionally incorporated these items for stability. Others dismiss it as fashion creep. You shift your weight once more, checking the knot with your palm. Still snug, still proud. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you spot someone across the room dressed in a different color scheme. Deep plum with a bold hawk pattern. Their obi effortless, tight, balanced, tied like it knows it belongs there. They meet your gaze, then lower their eyes, giving the tiniest bow. You return it. Because in this world, your knot says everything. It says how much effort you gave, how carefully you paid attention, how well you listened to the fabric, how much you're willing to suffer for the privilege of walking like folded elegance. The obi is a band of silk, but tonight it's also a line in the sand, between who you were when you entered this place and who you've become while inside it. Your obi now cinched and spirit feeling eerily composed, you begin your walk toward the quietude of the outer corridor. The hem of your kimono trails just above the floor, and the knot at your back presses in gently but firmly, a reminder that you are held together by tradition, patience, and a fabric sash with an attitude. Then something shifts. You're ushered into a side room, dimly lit, lined wall to wall, with hanging kimono panels, each whispering stories in colors and symbols. A sensory overload of fabric ocean blues, sun-faded reds, whispering grays. Patterns, patterns, patterns. You freeze. This room doesn't speak. It gossips. Every stitch seems to judge or reveal something: who you are, what you value, how many seasonal mochi you've eaten. This isn't about fashion. It's about coded messaging through threads. A scroll on the wall reads simply, Shin Hamoyang ni Suru. The heart lives in the pattern. Mainstream fact. In samurai society, particularly among the upper echelons, clothing patterns were not personal whims, they were statements. Family symbols, clan loyalty, even one's marital status. You'd never wear chrysanthemum in spring. It's an autumn flower. And you'd certainly never wear overlapping fan patterns unless you were announcing ambition, sometimes too loudly. You step closer to a robe with wisteria vines coiling up its side. Wisteria once symbolized humility and endurance, favored by older women and widowed nobility. You move to another crane feathers in a looping arc. That meant longevity. And a bit of smugness, frankly. You examine your own pattern again. Still the subtle cranes in wind. You now realize you've been sending a message all evening, something between I respect tradition and please don't ask me to recite poetry. A panel of asagao or morning glories catches your eye, blues and purples inked with softness. You're told quietly that in Edo times this pattern was favored by young women, hoping to convey beauty that blooms briefly romantic and fleeting. Wearing this as a man might be provocative. You step back. Duly noted. Then there's a Kiko pattern, hexagons like turtle shells symbolic of protection and longevity. This one feels sturdy, almost militant. You touch the sleeve. It feels cooler than the others, denser. A kimono meant for a public audience, maybe a diplomatic meeting or a father-in-law showdown. Fringe tidbits samurai often had message robes kimono they'd wear for specific social maneuvers, formal petitions, introductions to prospective in-laws, poetry gatherings. You couldn't just wear any robe. Your pattern had to speak before your mouth did. In the back of the room, there's a collection of unpatterned kimonos, just solid colors, deep indigo, soft charcoal dull jade. You're told these were often worn in mourning or by older warriors who believed that the less you say, the stronger your words. Or perhaps their closets just got quieter with time. And then comes the awkward part, a robe hung high, wrapped in a design so chaotic you can't even decipher it. Waves crashing into birds flying upside down, plum blossoms in snow, fish swimming through clouds. You blink. An attendant chuckles softly behind their sleeve. For the poets. Ah, of course. The samurai class wasn't all duels and discipline, they also fancied themselves philosophers. A wildly patterned kimono wasn't just allowed, it was celebrated if you could back it up with a sonnet, or at least a competent haiku. You imagine showing up to a tea ceremony in that robe. You'd have to explain your cloudfish wave bird blossom madness with a straight face. High risk, high reward. Historians still argue whether exaggerated patterns were used to provoke admiration or mockery, especially among rival clans. Some believe that pattern duels were common not in swordplay, but in subtle social digs through color clashes and motif choices. Others say the louder the robe, the more confident the wearer, or the more insecure. Depends who you ask. You leave the pattern room with a new awareness. Every fold of your sleeve, every motif on your collar, every shadow in your hem is a conversation. You're not just dressed, you're speaking even in silence. As you walk past another corridor, you see two men nodding at one another. Not bowing, not speaking, just nodding. Their robes say the rest. One wears pine boughs over falling snow steadfastness in hardship. The other waves crashing beneath a rising moon ambition beneath serenity. You wonder if they're best friends, or political enemies, or both. Your feet carry you now toward the final chamber, every step clicking lightly in the geta, every brush of your sleeve whispering identity. You don't need to speak anymore. The robe talks for you. And just to make sure you sneak a glance down, left over right. Still living, still learning. Now also literate. You follow a lantern-lit corridor, lined with polished wood and faint shadows of pine branches swaying outside. Your steps now carry the calm weight of someone fully robed in intention. The kimono folds around you like a silent agreement. You've passed the bath, the folds the knot. You've learned to read patterns like poetry. But now comes something deceptively small, something humble, quiet, and absolutely unavoidable. The socks with split toes. Again, except this time you're not just slipping them on. This time you're expected to wear them like you mean it. Because now those tabi aren't just socks. They're the last defense between your calloused mortal feet and the formal tap dance of wooden shoes called gaita. You're led to a small raised platform where a pair of fresh white tabi rests. These are cleaner than your earlier pair, crisper. They've been warmed on a stone slab and they smell faintly of rice starch and camphor. One attendant kneels, and for a second you panic. Are they going to put these on for you? Nope. They lay them gently at your feet, bow slightly and back away. The gesture is clear this part is yours. Alone. You sit down with reverence. The room is silent except for a faint rustle of fabric as someone shifts in the adjacent chamber. You reach down, unfold the tabi carefully, and begin the ritual again. Big toe in first, the rest follows. Tuck, adjust. Slide the ties around your ankle, fasten them into the small loops, then the other. No mistakes this time. No twisting. You've learned. You've evolved. Mainstream historical note tabi were a staple in Japanese footwear from as early as the 15th century. Worn by everyone from farmers to daimyo, they were often individually tailored, and white tabi, in particular, symbolized cleanliness and purity, especially during ceremonial events. Samurai would often carry extra pairs in their travel satchels just in case one got soiled. Because a dirty tabi at a tea gathering, that was basically social Sudoku. Unsolvable. You rise to your feet. Your toes feel separated, but not in a bad way. It's oddly refreshing now, like each foot has its own small opinion. And then the geta. You recognize them from earlier, but now they feel earned. You step up and slide your feet between the cloth thongs. There's that small, satisfying resistance as your tabi-clad big toe settles into its niche. Then you step. Clack. Again. Clack. The rhythm returns. But this time something's different. You're outside now under the veranda roof where the breeze is cooler and the moon hangs lazily in the sky like a silver ink blot. You begin to walk the garden path. Clack. 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 It's not loud. It's pronounced. A statement. A language you didn't know you were learning until now. Fringe tidbit. In some regions, the way you walked in geta signaled your emotional state. A rapid, uneven gait, frustration. A slow, even clack, confidence. Hesitation between steps. Romantic distraction. It was said that in certain towns, mothers could tell what kind of day their children had at school just by listening to them walk home from behind a shoji screen. Your stride tonight, peaceful, grounded. Not because your feet feel perfect, far from it. It's the rhythm that carries you. It becomes a lullaby, a wooden heartbeat beneath the stars. You make your way to a small wooden bench beside a koi pond. Lanterns flicker on the water. You sit down slowly, legs folded to one side in the formal seiza posture, though you secretly angle your foot slightly for comfort. The geta dangle from your toes. From here, the world feels distant. Smaller, simpler. The rustle of bamboo, the soft splash of a curious carp, the rustling fabric of your sleeves moving in the breeze. And then, a sigh. Your own. Slow, surprised. You feel complete, not perfect, not polished, but wrapped literally and figuratively in an experience that required effort, care, and humility. You've been steamed, scrubbed, chilled, folded, tied, and softly judged by inanimate footwear. And here you are. You pluck a single fallen maple leaf from the bench beside you. Crimson veins spread across its surface like old roads. You place it gently in your sleeve. Yes, that's a thing. Kimono sleeves often doubled as pockets wide enough to hold fans' handkerchiefs, even small letters. In this case, a memento, a whisper of where you've been. Historians still argue whether tabi and geta were standardized across regions or customized by domain, with some suggesting that particular lords mandated unique footwear styles as a sort of fashionable military branding. Others insist regional preference was more about terrain. Mountain provinces used thicker soles. Coastal areas preferred lighter ones, better for beach parades and dramatic exits. You look down at your feet now, encased in soft cotton, lifted on two slabs of wood. Somehow, despite everything, you feel taller, not because of the inches, but because of the ritual. These aren't just socks, not just shoes. They're the final filter through which your bathhouse experience touches the earth again. You stand once more. You walk the gravel path, each step confident, now rhythm as natural as breath. Tabi. Geta. Heart folded. Mind quiet. Feet separated, but unified. You step inside again, one foot after the other, leaving faint impressions on the matting where your geta kissed the ground. The sandals are now neatly placed by the threshold, always pointing outward, of course. Turning them around before stepping in would be about as rude as handing someone a sword blade first. Now, barefoot in your tabi sleeves swaying slightly, you're led toward the hair preparation area. Yes, you heard that right. The night is nearly done, but you're not finished until your head is properly addressed. The chamber is small, lined with low tables bearing ceramic jars, slender combs, and tiny lacquered boxes filled with hair oils and scented powder. A low bronze mirror sits in front of a simple cushion. You sit. There's no barber, no stylist, no chatty hairdresser asking about your weekend plans. Just you. and the ghosts of generations of hair-conscious samurai watching silently over your shoulder. You run a hand through your slightly damp hair. It's been through a lot: steam, cold water towel, friction, camellia oil. It deserves a proper finale. You pick up the first comb. It's not plastic. It's bamboo, fine-toothed, fragrant, and smooth. You begin slowly untangling gently. Your scalp responds with that sleepy warmth that comes only from old-school grooming. You breathe deeper. Mainstream fact samurai hair wasn't just style, it was status. The iconic Sean-made shaved top slicked back sides knotted at the crown was more than a fashion choice. It was a class identifier, a mark of martial readiness, and in some cases a literal helmet stabilizer. Armor needed something to grip after all. You're not attempting that tonight. Thankfully, you're simply smoothing your hair into an acceptable shape, applying a small dab of binchatan oil, a traditional blend used to soften, add luster, and repel both lice and dishonor. It smells of smoke and distant orchids. And then the unexpected weapon, judgmental elders. You don't hear them, but you feel them. The invisible force of centuries' worth of etiquette, watching to ensure you part your hair correctly left side, unless you're being dramatic. Avoid cowlicks, which were somehow associated with laziness, and definitely don't tie your hair in a merchant knot, which was considered garish and overly ambitious for someone of your presumed status. You take your time. You're not just grooming, you're making your head socially presentable. This was historically just as important as the kimono, the obi, even the folding. You remember reading once that a samurai could be demoted or ridiculed for unkempt hair, especially in front of superiors or during public ceremonies. And heaven help the one who appeared with greasy sideburns. That was basically political suicide. You finish combing using a wide-toothed piece to lift the volume slightly. No wax tonight. No heavy lacquer. This is a sleep look, not a court performance. A young boy, perhaps a junior attendant, scurries by the doorway with a tray of unused towels. He peeks in briefly, eyes wide, likely wondering why anyone's still fussing with their hair this late. You give him a small smile. He bows awkwardly and hurries on. Fringe tidbit. In some domains, younger samurai were required to learn formal hair etiquette before they were allowed to attend strategy meetings or court poetry readings. In fact, some elders would test their juniors by handing them tangled combs and observing their technique. Pass respect. Fail humiliation, and possibly extra chores involving koi pons. You put down the comb and pick up a small sachet of powdered sandalwood, dabbing it along your temples and neck. Not too much, just enough to leave a trace of forest and tradition behind. Now comes the final step, a hair cloth folded and tied loosely to keep your head neat while you sleep. It's a simple wrap, dark cotton, secured with a soft knot at the nape. It feels snug, protective. The way a helmet might feel if it were made of bedtime. You glance once more in the mirror. Your eyes look softer now. Not tired, just settled. Your reflection doesn't blink, but it seems to nod. You've done well. You've held still when needed. You've not offended any ancestral spirits. Probably. Historians still argue whether daily hair rituals were commonly practiced among all levels of samurai, or if they were primarily an upper-class obsession. Some argue that field warriors wouldn't have had the time. Others claim even the roughest ronin carried combs, oils, and a compact mirror tucked beside their whetstone. You rise slowly, the cloth tied around your head like a soft crown. Your sleeves follow with a rustle. You walk now with silence, a practiced stillness in your limbs. You pass the same scroll by the entrance that greeted you hours ago. You bow again, somehow deeper this time. You've bathed, folded, tied, wrapped, combed, and powdered. And not once have you tripped. You've survived what might be the quietest trial in all of warrior culture, one that has less to do with blades and more to do with disciplined fabric and really tiny knots. Outside the room, the wind has quieted. The bamboo clack fountain has stopped. Even the koi seem to float a little slower. And you, dressed, bound, and softly perfumed, are finally ready for sleep. You leave the grooming chamber behind the faint scent of sandalwood and camphor still clinging to your shoulders like a polite ghost. Your hair is smooth, restrained by the headcloth, and your mind feels equally tucked in. But the night isn't quite over, not until you face the final corridor. This hallway is darker than the rest. Not ominous, just hushed. The paper lanterns here are dimmer, their glow like the last flickers of a dream just before waking. You walk slower now. Not from fatigue, but reverence. Each step feels like punctuation closing lines on a poem made of steam fabric and ritual. At the far end lies a small sliding door. You pause, not out of hesitation, but to savor the moment. You've been through heat and cold folding, and fastening toe separation and socially complex pattern analysis. Beyond this door is your bed for the night, and you're almost certain it doesn't involve a pillow. Or perhaps it involves too much pillow. With the Japanese, it's hard to predict. You slide the door open. Inside simplicity, harmony, stillness. A futon laid out over tightly woven tatami. The bedding is flat, but inviting thick cotton layers meticulously aligned. A soft blanket with faint embroidery at the hem. 2 cushions, one large one suspiciously firm and rectangular, the makura or head pillow. Mainstream fact, traditional makura weren't fluffy. They were often filled with buckwheat hulls or beans designed to hold the head at a precise height, supporting posture, preserving hairstyles, and offering what can only be described as mild orthopedic judgment. Samurai were expected to sleep like they lived aligned, contained, and unmoved by softness. You kneel at the edge of the futon and begin the slow, careful process of disrobing, not completely, of course. This is sleep, not scandal. But you remove your outer kimono, folding it precisely, deliberately, as if tucking away the day itself. You're left in your inner robe light and breathable, dyed a subtle indigo gray. Your obi is untied, and for the first time in hours, your torso expands fully. You didn't realize how much you'd adjusted your breathing until now. You breathe deep. Your ribs thank you. Your shoulders relax. Your sternum sighs. You fold the obi with slow reverence. It deserves nothing less. Each fold is a memory, each crease a silent promise that you will in fact retie this again one day without crying. Beside your futon, a small tray holds a wooden water ladle, a ceramic cup, and unexpectedly a tiny bell. A single chime before sleep. You pick it up, give it a soft shake. Ting. It doesn't resonate long, just enough to mark the shift from preparation to rest, from warrior to wanderer of dreams. Fringe tidbit. In some temples and traditional homes, a single bell chime before bed was believed to ward off wandering spirits, especially those drawn to unsettled minds. It wasn't about fear, it was about courtesy. "I'm going to sleep now," the bell said. "Please don't bother me, or rearrange my furniture." You sip your water, you lay your folded kimono near the edge of the futon, sleeves aligned. Your tabi are removed and placed heel to wall, toe out, always ready to step forward. You lower yourself onto the bedding slowly. The mattress doesn't hug you, it acknowledges you. You settle into its modest firmness shoulders, aligning with ancient geometry. You place your head on the makura. It's firm, honest, judicious, and somehow it works. You lie still, eyes tracing the paper ceiling above. The lanterns outside your room have dimmed further. Somewhere nearby, a floorboard creaks as another guest moves into slumber. You hear the distant hush of a bamboo water spout tilting and emptying. Historians still argue whether samurai were encouraged to sleep on their backs for optimal readiness in case of night attacks, or whether side sleeping was accepted in times of peace. Some records suggest that young warriors were trained to wake soundlessly from any position, even flat on their stomachs, which sounds noble but also impossible. You roll gently onto your side. The headcloth keeps your hair from shifting. The inner robe adjusts with a soft swish. And there at last is stillness. All the layers, physical and otherwise, now at rest. The sandalwood, the sweat, the silence, the centuries of ritual wrapped around your bones. You close your eyes. The bathhouse holds its breath. You are clean. You are folded. You are ready to dream. You lie in stillness, wrapped not just in fabric, but in the final echo of ceremony. Every fold of your inner robe cradles you like a quiet affirmation you did it. You followed the ritual. You honored the silence. You walked the gravel path in wooden stilts without falling into a koi pond. That's more than most people can say. The lanterns outside your room are dim now, barely glinting against the paper walls. The air smells like cedar with a hint of rice smoke still lingering from somewhere deep within the bathhouse. The kind of scent that clings to dreams, the kind you might mistake for memory when you wake. Your hands rest on your stomach, fingers slightly curled. You've kept still for so long, and yet every part of your body feels touched by motion, scrubbed, wrapped, combed, folded, balanced, and now weightless. There's something uniquely humbling about being put back together piece by piece. And that's exactly what this ritual was. Not just hygiene, not just dressing, but realignment of the spine, of the soul, of your pacing in the world. And now the final bow awaits. Not a literal one. Not a deep bend from the waist, but a symbolic one. A bow to sleep, to surrender. You glance at the wooden beams above your futon, their knots like tiny eyes watching from centuries past. There's comfort in their stillness, a sense of continuity. Mainstream historical truth samurai valued sleep not only as recovery, but as readiness. Even rest was disciplined. They would keep weapons nearby, face the door, train their minds to awaken without sound, without struggle. But not every night was a battlefield. Some nights like this one were rituals of peace, a reward for duty fulfilled, not danger anticipated. The makura beneath your head doesn't give. It supports. Just enough to keep your posture honest. Just enough to keep you from drifting into slack-jawed oblivion. You shift carefully, folding one arm beneath the light blanket. Your knees relax. Your breath deepens. The silence becomes vast. And then a final gift. A small square envelope placed beside your bedding. You didn't see it before. Inside a folded haiku on handmade paper, inked by brush, signed with a red seal you can't read. You unfold it carefully, eyes adjusting to the dim. Steam fades from pine bark threads. Remember, every fold, even silence breathes. A pause, a small smile. You tuck the paper gently into your sleeve, where it rests like a final seal. Fringe tidbit. It was common in certain bathhouses and temple inns for guests to be offered sleeping verses composed by staff monks or even anonymous patrons. It was said that carrying a poem into sleep would soften dreams and bind the night into a circle. And here your circle closes. You've crossed from sweat to steam, from water to fabric, from knots to stillness. Every gesture, every silence, every ripple of scent or sound was a step along the path. You didn't survive a duel tonight. You survived something subtler, the quiet test of slowing down. And now your breathing slows. The room doesn't grow darker, it just lets go of the last bits of day. You're ready. And now let the folds fall away in your mind. Let the scent of sandalwood grow faint. Let the weight of the knot at your back dissolve. There are no more steps to take. No more garments to adjust. No more toes to separate. Just the steady rhythm of your breath and the soft, distant echo of your wooden sandals tapping out a lullaby somewhere far behind you. Your body is still. Your thoughts quieter now, as if they too have slipped into cotton robes and sat quietly beside you. The world outside the bathhouse is still there, but right now it waits. Everything waits. Even time seems to lean its head back and exhale. You feel your breath rising and falling beneath layers of memory and sleep. Feel the quiet under your ribs, the coolness on your forehead where the cloth rests. Your toes are relaxed, your knees unbent, your shoulders lighter than they've been in days. If there's a dream waiting for you, it's not in a rush. It knows you'll find it when you're ready. Or maybe you're already halfway there. Just listen now to the silence. Let it widen. Let it hold you. You've earned this stillness. No sword to lift, no ritual left undone. Just the night wrapping around you like a second robe. Let go now. Close your eyes and drift. Sleep well, warrior.